Okay, we're going to get started. Welcome, everyone. My name is Adam Greco, and I work for Search Discovery and am the manager of the SDEC. For those of you who haven't been to a presentation before, the SDEC is a free analytics education community in which we cover about 12 different topics related to digital analytics. And our original goal was to help those who were negatively impacted by the pandemic, but we now, can't believe this, but we're over 2,500 members across 75 countries. So it's really taken off. And if you have anyone that you know of who would like to participate or join any of these sessions, I will be putting a link that you can give them in the chat. Today's session is going to be related to digital strategy, and Steen is going to present for the first half hour or so. And if you have questions while he is presenting, please put them in the Q&A area, and I'll be monitoring that. It's a little tricky if you put them in the chat. I'm going to just yell at you to put it in the Q&A, so save all of us time and put them in the Q&A area. And then Steen is going to tackle those questions at the end of this session. But if you have any technical questions or just need help with something, you can ping me on the chat during the session. So with that, I'm going to hand it off to Steen Rasmussen. Steen, thanks for joining us, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Adam. So I have been looking forward to this for a while. I've been a fan of the educational community for Search Discovery, so this is a pleasure being here. So my notes today on the subject that I'm tackling today is basically what I like to talk about. I've attended 1,000 conferences, and every time I attend, there's a lot of technical talk, and I really sometimes miss somebody talking business. So I've kind of trying to take in that role as the devil's advocate and pushing the business agenda in all this lovely, cool data stuff. I'm going to introduce myself a bit more in a second, but first I'm going to kick off with a question, because this is kind of the core of what my session is going to be about. So basically the question is, why did anybody hire you? It's a question we don't really ask ourselves that often as analysts. Well, basically in any position, but the question or the answer to the question is basically the same no matter what job you hold, right? Why did anybody hire you? Well, they basically hired you because they think that their business would run better with you on the team. So tackling you from this aspect, you're basically an investment. Any employee hired by a company is an investment that is supposed to lift the outcome or performance of the business. That is, if we boil it down. And the same can be said for analytics. Why does anybody invest massive amounts in analytics? Why do we pay for an Adobe Analytics or Google Analytics? Why do we pay consultants to come and install it? Why do we spend money on it? At the end, when everything is boiled down, it's because we think that it will improve the business. And this is kind of the challenge that I'm going to be trying to share with you today, saying, are we really being a good return on investment? So not just looking at the marketing stack, not just looking at the activities that we're doing, but us as analysts as an investment. What is the value of us? For me, you can call me Steen. That is actually my name. I've been doing this analytics things for close to 20 years now. I was doing Google Analytics from day one. I didn't do Urchin. I was doing web trends at the time. We're feeling really old and self-aware now. But I'm a senior partner at IH Nordic. Consultancy started 15 years ago, which basically is one of the leading data agencies in the Nordic, specializing in data and activation. So we're a cloud partner. We're doing all the usual stuff with Google Cloud and marketing for cloud. We're doing the Google marketing platform and a lot of Google Analytics 360. We also cover the activation side, or the activation side of data. So we do conversion rate optimization, we do online marketing, SEO, and all this stuff in relations to get a return on the client's investment. So that's kind of the short story in relations to 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 me. The only thing I'm going to add, and this is kind of the proof in the pudding, what we're most famous for is actually that we have taken our own medicine, looked at our own company, and then we have gone to a 4-day, 30-hour work week back in 2017 and still only work 30 hours. So by being data driven and actually focusing on the value that we generate instead of focusing just on the activities that we have actually been able to reduce an entire day of work and remove it, and instead being able to focus that same energy on the other days. So turnover is better. We're doing the bottom line is improving. So everything is basically just going, yeah, good. So and that means that we're basically not wasting a lot of time by being more efficient. So with that said, what is it that we do in analytics? And this is not us as IAH. This is basically us as analysts in general. So this is a model I've built over time, saying that we basically have 5 types of activities. We do data gathering, we do data enrichment, we provide access to data, we do visualization and reporting, and then we do activation and analysis. The interesting part of this is, if you look at this from a value perspective, where do we create any value for the company? It is actually only on the last step, activation and analysis. Data gathering, sources, source integration, account structure, reporting, and dashboards in themselves do not create any value. I'm trying to push things to the edge here, but it's basically a dashboard that is not activated does not have a value. And this is just basically trying to change this line of thinking. What we also see is there's a massive shift in analytics going on right now, where towards analysis and insight and automation and machine learning. Now, the key thing in relation to this is actually that these activations and analysis and everything that we do has to be tied to the organizational objectives. But what we still see very often is that online activities are kind of separated from general activities. So we're not tied into the annual strategy. There's not a practical level of functionality in that sense. But still, that is one of the things that is the challenge, because we talk way too much about elements from the first 4 steps when we fill out we do data gathering, we do data enrichment, data access and visualization, but we forget to talk the language of the organization. Because if we flip things around, no matter how good a data set we have, no matter how magnificent the GTM setup or integrations, what we actually do in my objective is we do this. This is basically, we reduce customer acquisition cost, we reduce customer acquisition time, and we increase profits in relations to customers. Now, the difference between these 2 slides is that the former, with all this stuff that is really nice and analytical, nobody outside the analytics department really care about that. But inside the organization or outside the department, this is the language that will actually get us attention. So if we talk about, this is what we do, saying with analytics, we use the numbers to increase profits. We use the numbers to reduce customer acquisition cost. Then suddenly the language that we're talking is the language that is being understood outside the simple analytics department, which is not simple at all. But we just need to be aware that there is one language we can talk between ourselves, and there's a language we need to talk when it comes to the rest of the organization. And to focus that and go a step closer to that, there's actually this what is the value of data? Now, over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of talk about data being the new oil or data being the new gold. But when we look at it, and then I think you will tend to agree saying that is not true. Data in itself is much more like meat. It has a much shorter lifespan. If I came to any of you and offered uh, you the competitor's data from 5 years ago, it would basically be worthless to you, right? So the idea of this graph on screen now is basically saying uh, the closer we get to the point of data gathering, the higher value it has. But what we normally do is we spend time going into, we gather some data, then we have to get it ready for analysis, then we do an analysis, then we decide on what actions to take, and then we actually do the action. And every time we spend time doing these steps, we're actually reducing the value of the data. And the challenge is right now that if we want to get full value of data, we need to focus much more on orchestration and activation and lot less on data gathering. Um, so that is the short-term axis. There's also the green axis where the value increases, and that is in relations to strategic initiative. But on an operational level, the line going down is basically we're losing business value of the data every second we wait. So if a visitor comes to your website today looking for something specific, then offering to them in a couple of days will most likely mean that you have missed your window of opportunity. So there was nothing wrong with the data. We were simply too slow in acting upon it. Now, what we see in the market in general is that been an immense change in the speed of traffic, right? So things can move much faster now. And a part of that change has been actually a change in mentality and the approach that we need to take to things. Because not that long time ago, we had to focus on the A/B test. We had to make this optimizing the funnel for a specific solution, but we were losing visitors on every single step by choosing either an A or B solution. Now, by changing this mindset, saying with the speed of data today, we're actually in a situation where we can go in and do both. It's not a question of A or B, it's a question of A and B. We can actually go in and with the data we have available, we can actually enable ourselves to tell whether a specific visitor on our website is interested in version A or version B, right? So they will be there and we will actually be able to target them not with the one size fits all solution, but actually the best solution for them because we can move things around that fast. So in the bigger picture, as I see it, it's basically rethinking what we're doing and saying our job is not to gather data. It's actually orchestrating analytics for profit or orchestrating analytics for business, going in and rethinking the activation thing in relations to the data. And the best example is, this is a true case. I'm going to show you a bit under the hood afterwards, but we made a project for a client when we integrated a lot of their internal data and their Google Analytics 360 data, Facebook data, and Google Ads data. And based on the activity on the website, we were actually able to build them a specific prediction engine with machine learning that would tell them the likelihood of somebody converting and buying their product in the next 7 days. This is really not that brilliant in itself. More people have done it afterwards, and then it's not the key thing. But the key thing is actually combining this information with your visit to the website to the activities that goes on afterwards. So if you look at the image, so the red group at the bottom, these are the people that, based on the model, is not likely to convert at all in the next 7 days. So what will happen to them is they will automatically be removed from marketing initiatives. There will be done no remarketing, no win-back campaigns, no offers for this segment. And similarly, for the group in the top, the green group, which is in this case around 5% of the visitors, are people who have already bought. They just don't necessarily know it yet. But based on their behavior on the website, we can see the likelihood to convert is more than 95%. So they will not be getting win-back offers. They will not be getting discounts. They will not be getting uh, extra brilliant offers, because that would basically just be giving away the profit in relations to the client. The rest of the marketing budget, because the top group will get a specific campaign, the bottom group will not get anything. So what is left of the budget will be focused on the groups in the middle, and focusing on what we can do in relations to increasing their likelihood to convert, because that is actually the people that we can move. It's the people who have a propensity to buy. So by prioritizing these in relations to from top to bottom, in relations to the most likely to convert first, we'll be giving the offers, and then we'll drizzle down. This client has actually been able to increase their sales with 10%, and that doesn't sound magnificent, but it's in a market that is yearly going down 10% currently. So where all the competitors are losing 10% a year, they have actually gained 10% instead by rethinking the data they have. The cool thing in this is that this has been built to be automatic. So it's not something people are involved in. This is combination. This is the infrastructure, combining the conversion prediction and feeding things back to Google Ads and actually other channels as well. But having this idea of the engine driving itself and looping data back into the core. So for my part, this is activation. This is where the value of the data we have in Google Analytics actually goes in and plays an active part in the business and supports the bottom line. Similarly, if we look beyond sales and marketing, we did a case for a customer where we went and did proactive customer service. So the idea here is basically flipping things around. So they had a challenge that every time they received a phone call, it was costing them around $8. And if the same customer called them more than 3 times in a year, then there would be no profit from that customer. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to increase customer service but reduce the number of calls. So the engine that was built there was actually rethinking things and saying, can we, based on the way that users use the website, predict if they will call? And if they will call, what will be their issue? And can we resolve that issue before they call? And I think the best example here was one of the things they were selling was broadband services. And with these broadband services, we could see a pattern that there were specific patterns. And if people were ending up calling them, there was a scenario where they would either get a new router to increase their speed, or they would terminate their subscription. So the moment we could identify this behavior on site, normally what would happen was, instead of waiting for them to call, they would simply get a message saying, hey, we can see that you're not getting full bang for your bucks, so we have sent you a new router. So instead of waiting for them to call and risk losing them, then basically just solving the problem before they were actually completely aware of what it was. That has been a really good business case for them as well. And it goes to show that data can support other parts of the organization, and especially the website data, and this behavior can be tied into this understanding. Now, what we see when we communicate is very often that we have a tendency to communicate, and this is being analytics. First off, we communicate too much of what we already know, and we only communicate what we have. So this is just an example saying sometimes we can actually build more value by telling what we can't tell. So this is a dummy dashboard, but the idea is we actually have some out there that works the same way. It's going in and actually having parts of the dashboard marked as inactive. And the reason why we put these inactive elements on the dashboard is to have people ask questions saying, hey, what is this? Why is this not active? And saying, oh, this is because people are not using UTM codes correct. If your staff or the other people in the organization were using these codes, then I could tell you the return on marketing. I could tell you if we were hitting the targets in relation to the objectives. But because I'm not getting that data, I cannot tell you that. And then suddenly the business focus that we can actually offer becomes visible instead of us just reporting on the numbers that we can report on. So from that aspect, it's kind of rethinking things and pushing the insights that we do hold. The return on analytics is not complicated because it's actually tied to the bottom. But one of the things that we have in analytics is that we basically it's a issue of our ability to answer questions. Now I've used this example in a couple of cases, but very often we are not open to questions and we don't think about the complexity of things enough. So if somebody comes to us and asks, can you show me the customer funnel? And if we don't have the answer, we will say, no, I can't. But instead of saying no, we could reverse the question and saying, this is actually, if this is an important business question, I can actually flip this question as saying, but I can answer this question if it's important to the organization. Then I have to start gathering some more data. So that is kind of the opening, right? Finally, just to round up with an anecdote to kind of show the difference of thinking and communication and why we have to think in a different way. So tomorrow I will be standing outside my office, and when one of my employees come, I will say, hey, I'm sorry, you have to go to the other side of the country to pick up my wife because I can't get her home during this COVID situation. And because I have nice employees, they will say, oh, cool, boss, I will go and fetch your wife. And they will jump in my car and they will start driving. And if they communicate like we normally do in analytics, then sooner or later they will call me and they will communicate based on the data they have available. So they will tell me, hey, the speedometer is on, I'm doing 70 miles an hour, I have 3/4 of a gas tank, and the radio is playing Keith Urban. But challenge is that this is not really what I need to know, right? They're reporting the information they have available. But sitting at the other end, what is my KPI? What is the information that I'm interested in? I basically only have one question that I'm interested in. And that is, when will my wife be back? Has nothing to do with the information available, right? And I don't really need to have that that huge amount of a check-in. If I get the message that she estimates or he estimates that my wife will be home at 7 tonight, then that's fine. Then the only thing I need to know along the way and the only reasons I need to be involved in the conversation if that changes. So saying, hey, I'm stuck at the harbor, I cannot get on the ferry, we just missed it. So either I have to wait an hour for the next ferry and then we'll be home an hour later, or I can be home at the same time, but then we have to take a detour across the bridge and that will cost you some extra money. So that is the level of things that I need to be involved. But very often as analytics, we focus way too much time on informing people of how we drive the car and not enough on on the thing that is actually relevant for the business. And that is actually where I'll leave you today. Well, I won't. I will give you a chance to ask some questions. So, what is the business outcome that we are supposed to be supporting with our analytics data? Is there anything that we can do then basically that we're not doing because we're focusing too much on the first step of the model? Are we doing enough to support the business and not just being there and going through more data? Because at the end of the day, the beautiful data that we gather today will be obsolete soon. So what can we do with the data? That is the value we create for the organization, and that is the reason that people hired us. It's to create the value, not just gather the data. So that was my 7 cents. If you have questions, this is your chance to ask them. Um, Otherwise, I will slowly start talking to myself. I can see, yeah.
Okay, awesome. Well, thanks so much, Steen. I know, we tend to get questions at the end, so now is the time. If any of you have questions for Steen, go ahead and put them in the Q&A area. We have noticed that we tend to get more questions on the super tactical sessions where we talk about detailed stuff, so it's always a little harder to get questions for things that are a little bit more on the digital strategy. I'm trying to figure out a way to fix that. But if anyone out there has questions, now would be a great time to throw them in there while you have Steen to answer them.
So I will just entertain yourself in the meanwhile. So actually, one of the questions I've been asking people when I've been doing presentations, I've been standing on stage, and then I've asked the room of probably a couple of thousand people by now. I've asked them the same questions in relations to data, asking them, saying, if you let me into your analytics and I can't find any errors, I'll give you $100. But if I find an error, you have to pay me $10. And out of those thousands of people that has actually received this question so far, nobody has been willing to take it because we know the data is not perfect. We know the data is bad in there, but instead of focusing the value, we focus on cleaning it up. And I think one of my key things, one of the key things in this is actually that we spend too much time trying to get to 100% in data quality instead of focusing on when is data good enough for me to start acting on it. Because the moment I can start acting on it, then I can start creating value that actually gives something back to the company. I can always hide behind the lack of data. I can always do reporting as an alibi, but actually going out there and putting my net out and creating something with the business, that is where we do really interesting stuff. Okay, cool. So I
So
can
now we're
see.
starting to get some questions in. As they come in, I'm going to ask one myself that I have for you. So I deal with a lot of organizations where I help them re-implement their analytics tags where they generally have a feeling that they don't think that they have a good implementation. But a lot of organizations that I work with, I find that they have a hard time justifying internally two things. One is an investment to have better implementations, and also kind of coupled with that is in general having better data quality. So if you were an organization that wanted to almost like either throw out what they have or re-engineer the whole Google Analytics or Adobe Analytics implementation, what would you use as a way to justify that from an ROI perspective?
It would be kind of a dual thing in the sense that first off, I'm one of the things I see that the main curse of analytics right now is the lack of continuity. So because we keep re-implementing stuff, we keep resetting our historical data, so we lose the timeline. So if I could avoid and actually just clean up what is there instead of doing a re-implementation, that would be the preferred way. And that would be my argument in relations to actually saying the value, we're not getting any value from the data we have, right? But that would be my excuse to not do it. If I wanted to do it and I thought it made sense, then the argument would be saying we need a setup that will enable us to support the business outcome and not just gathering the data, right? So instead of separating the two and saying data does not live its own life, there is one of the great discussions I've had is saying there is no such thing as a digital strategy. There's a strategy in relations to how digital supports the business strategy, but digital does not have a strategy on its own because it's tied to the overall business. And that would be my motivation, saying, if we get the correct setup, then we will be able to support the business strategy and deliver business outcomes.
Okay. Yep,
Yeah,
that sounds good. Okay, so now
cool.
we got a bunch of them, so we'll do some quick hit questions here. So,
Yeah.
do you have a formula that you use to show ROI based on the improvement to customer retention?
Um, can you, do
Yeah,
you
so
have,
Carolyn asked, do you have a
yeah, do you
formula
have,
that you
yeah.
use to show ROI based on the improvement to customer retention?
Yes, we do. So we have models in relation to customer lifetime value. We see customer lifetime value in relation to analytics as being the next black. This is basically what we are trying to improve. So we go in and we have different models in relations to user behavior. So one of the things we've done, for instance, is uh, based on a customer's data, we have gone in and we have uh, kind of as an objection to people making personas, we have made live clusters. So based on user behavior on the site, we will put them in groups, and each of these groups will have a customer lifetime value. So part of the idea is saying we don't have to do a lot with the users. We just have to move them from one cluster to another to help increase the customer lifetime value. So we don't have one formula. We have a multitude of formulas tied to the individual customers, but customer lifetime value is the heart of it, and what we actually see as the key thing in relations to the long-term business.
Okay, awesome. I know some of these are like really long things that you could probably take a half
Yeah,
hour to
yeah.
discuss, but we generally kind of go through quick Q&A here, so just so we can get to as many as possible. But I'm going to give you a list of the questions. If you want to answer any of them in written format afterwards, we can do that as well. So the next
Okay,
one
cool.
is, often the data deluge we provide is in part to gain respect for the amount of work involved in turning over 10,000 rocks. Only reporting the 2 rocks of value often makes stakeholders feel the job is easy. Any suggestions on how to avoid this?
Yeah, we see this a lot. It's I, I try to use there's a human bias called the Dunning-Kruger effect. If people have never tried anything, they have a tendency to think it's easy. So getting people involved and actually uh, trying to either make them do what we do, because then they realize it's not easy. So the best example is saying, yeah, cool, uh, I'm really good at surfing. Right? I can go surfing, and then I think, okay, cool, I'm good at surfing. And somebody asked me, are you good at kite surfing as well? And then I will try to say, yeah, well, I'm good at surfing, so I'm probably also good at kite surfing. But the moment the wind pick up the sails, I will be realizing I have no idea what I'm doing. So getting people to kind of understand that the complexity of what we're doing is high, because on the wrong side of this, people will underestimate the difficulty of what we're doing, and especially if we, at the same time, then only show them a few things that we've done with success. So actually saying, changing the story and go out and try researching on the culture of experimentation, because analytics is wonderful, but in reality, the numbers very rarely comes with the answer. The numbers basically just help us ask better questions, right? So in most cases, what questions are we working on answering? If we can get that aligned and actually saying these are the questions, business questions that we're working on answering right now, then hopefully we can get around the shifting in the data.
Okay, so next question. For companies that don't know what is and isn't possible with analytics, how do I as an analyst teach them how to ask questions? Sometimes tell me what you want to know doesn't work with stakeholders who don't know what is available and possible.
Yeah. But I think it's a dual problem in the sense that sometimes we're really bad at knowing what it is we have available. So we've done a lot of analysis across different data sets, and actually one of the most valuable data set is analytics data can tell you about market demand, but that's not the questions we tell them they can ask. So very often we focus too much in saying, so what do you want to know about the website? But activities about the website is actually the smallest thing in this. It's actually being open to the question and saying, hey, can I answer this question if I have some time? Or what is the biggest business question that they have right now? That was actually the complete opposite to the question, right? Just saying we have to be better at accepting more difficult questions. That is the question that clients will be answering, because otherwise uh, the relevance of the question, if we focus too much of the data we have available in analytics, then it's not helping them, because then then we will give them the ability to ask for numbers, but it could be teaching them to, they can ask us question about trends. What is the market? Is there a change in market demand for specific products? Are customers showing interest in new things? So it's actually meeting them and being able to think more business ourselves and not just talk a lot of analytics. And to throw you an idea of how annoying this is so you go to the finance department and you get them to say, hey, what questions can I ask you?
Yep.
Right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so we have two questions that are kind of, I'm going to combine them because they're similar. One had a lot of time goes into data cleaning. What is the best way to explain the time taken for this for business people? And then Adam also kind of chimed in saying, I agree with not needing 100% accuracy, but how do we get upper management to trust data and are willing to take action on it? So I think it's kind of like a combined question of how do we get people to trust the data and justify the time spent to keep the data clean.
Yes. So I think it's actually going back to our own trust in ourselves. Uh, because you all know that dude from marketing that gets some questionnaire done by an agency, and they do an analysis of segments. And when he presented like it's 100% rock solid data that he has, and most of it is basically loose data that has been generalized from assumption on a much poorer basis than the data that we have in analytics. But he just presented with conviction. So, but it's like, because we know that our data suck, we know that if they ask the right questions, we will have to admit that the data is not good. Then we start all our presentations with 20 excuses and saying the sun was setting in the west, and because the wind was from the south, that meant that we have 10 reasons why they have to not trust our data, right? So sometimes it's just getting out there and presenting our data in the same way, like it's solid. Because in most cases, nobody will challenge your data. There might be the one guy there sitting saying, but hey, that's wrong. And then we have to go back and rethink things. But conviction will take things a long way. So we don't. So the reason why they don't trust it is very often our fault. And then it means that we will go back and spend more time uh, trying to fix the data. And it basically goes back to the question of saying, getting management buy-in from saying, when is the data good enough? Because what is the mandate that we have from management? What if we go back to the question, why did they hire us? They hire us to come with business recommendations to improve digital activities. They did not hire us to deliver a best in show data set, right? So rethinking that, saying we are here to deliver data that is good enough to make decisions on, and not necessarily scientific bulletproof statistics.
Okay, next question. David had said, how about when digital experience is not really a direct response, for example, awareness over engagement?
Uh, well, still the touch point would be somewhere else. So you would still have the ability to if awareness was the key measure. So for instance, we made a dashboard. We had like uh, we built an engine for a customer that focused on actually building relations. So because awareness is fine, but awareness is not the end goal. So this is just saying, is there another goal that is closer to where the business is? Because very often then we go in analytics and then we say, yeah, cool, I want people to download my PDFs. What is the business value of a downloaded PDF? Well, it might be something, but in itself, it's nothing, right? It just means that we have gotten some more information out there. But if we twist that around and say, hey, awareness is cool, but it's supposed to be something else. What is this awareness supposed to push to? And I don't know if it answers the question, but it's actually trying to rethink awareness to the next step, saying, what is the definition of awareness? Is it that they've been there to your site and they've seen 7 pages? Then the issue is actually being able to push it to the next level and make it more specific in relation to what's going on.
Okay. Next one I've got here is for any tactical requirements which is not aimed towards the end goal, do you associate cost to it to tread in the right path? What kind of collateral do you use to highlight this cost and technical debt? So I'm
I
not
think
sure
it's
if I 100% get all that, but hopefully that makes sense to you.
yeah. So in reality, the return on analytics is comprised of all the activities we do, right? So you buy a license and you hire consultants and you have to maintain servers and do other activities. So if you want to be really accountable, then you add all these stuff up. Also, your own hours saying one of the classic things is people saying SEO is free traffic. It's not, because you pay somebody to optimize your site, so there's a cost related to it. And very often uh, it's this cost that you need to be in control of. But what we try to do when we focus on the value is actually going in and focus a lot on the on the on the margin of the outcomes and not the turnover. Google Analytics is actually an annoying product when it comes to this, because very often if we don't do anything extra, it will uh, it will help us improve turnover. So one of the biggest lies that we say as analysts is that we're improving the bottom line. And very often as consultants, we're not improving the bottom line, we're improving the top line. And I've done analysis in relations to the processes, saying specifically on the other elements of the process that meant that magnificent campaigns were actually creating a deficit every single time that people bought it. So having this awareness of saying, if we can combine the cost with the actual income, then we'll get a true idea of the business that is there.
Okay, so we've got 2 that I'm going to combine into our last question for today. So one is, how do you convince non-technical people who are not aware of analytics to invest in analytics? And I think that may be somewhat related to another question that says, do you have any suggestions and tips on how to approach teams to support them if they don't come to us? So I think both of those are around, like, if you have teams who don't know what you can do, or maybe they don't understand analytics, how do you basically convince non-technical and people who aren't interested in working with your analytics team?
So basically, I think it would give them an example saying, okay, so if you drive a car, and they most likely they will, do they like their GPS? Right? Would they like to have a car with a GPS or without a GPS? And when they run the digital business, would they like something that could be resembling a GPS? Because with the correct type of analytics, we can actually go and do the parallel. If we go back to the story in the car, saying good analytics as a GPS, it helps us make the decisions that will get us to the place. And if they don't like GPSs and they prefer to drive with a map and gut feeling, then honestly, it's time to get another job, because then they will never act on it. And then it'll just be, you'll be a sad reporting monkey sitting there just sending out reports that nobody looks at.
Yeah. Well said. Well said. Okay, well, we've hit our time. So, Steen, thank you so much for joining. It's awesome to have different voices come in to share on all these different topics. If you all want to reach out to Steen, his contact information is on the screen here. So, again, thank you so much, and we look forward to seeing everyone on a future SDEC session.
Yeah, and before you dash, if you want to, if any of the people who have questions, please just feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and then send me the question there. You don't have to have enjoyed the session if you have a good question. So just hook up with me there, and then I will try to give you some good answers from there. Cool.
Awesome.
That was it
Okay,
for me.
thanks again. Thanks again,
Yeah, sure.
Steen.
Have
Okay,
a great
take
day,
care.
guys. Cheers.
Okay, bye, guys.